It is Chris Aiken Presents, and I, of course, am Chris Aiken. And today on the show, I am thrilled to be talking to this guy as a lifelong Accept fan. I have seen this guy play 100 times, and now he has a new band that I hope to see 100 more times, because if this new release, Requiem Reloaded, is any indication, we are in for a great ride with a great new band. As I said, the name of the album is Requiem Reloaded. The band is called Ashrain, and here to talk all about it is the legendary bassist of Accept and of Ashrain, Mr. Peter Baltes. Peter, how are you, sir?
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, Peter, as I was telling you before we got started, I love this record. I mean, it is, I'm going to be honest, it's very different than I expected from you, and I think you're probably going to get that a lot because people are going to automatically think Accept, which this is not. You know, if I don't want to put comparisons, but it's almost like a very clean Primal Fear sounding band more than a Accept, but it's definitely different. And I think it's obviously different because of the players that are involved. So why don't we start there, man, and give us a kind of a rundown of Ashrain, how it came together, and how you became part of it.
Well, I think 2018, when we did the last shows in Japan and Tokyo with Accept, Nozomo was backstage, and my wife introduced me to him. She knew him from before, and we hit it off. You know, you talk, and then sometimes you talk with somebody, and there's a certain connection that you can't really explain, but it's there.
Okay.
And we took it from there. And, you know, I went on, he went on, and then a while later, I think the next year or something, I get a call from him, and he asked me if I could play some bass tracks for him.
Okay.
For some project, and I did. And then he called me again, and he said he's producing Paul Shortino from Rough Cut. Could I play some stuff there? And they had Mendoza before, and so they wanted, you know, something heavier.
Okay.
And I did that, and we became really good friends. And while he was up here in Vegas, he came to see me in Nashville. At the time, I lived in Nashville, and we worked on some stuff there. And then next time I spoke to him, he said, "Listen, I have this album, Requiem Reloaded, which I, released before years ago, but I want to redo it. And would you play the bass?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And then he said, "You know what? The record company is so thrilled, and I'm so thrilled with your bass, the way you play and everything. Would you be interested we do something together as a band?" And I said, well, at the time, it was during the pandemic, and I was sitting at home anyway. So I said, all right, let's start writing some stuff. So finished playing the bass for Requiem, and now we're working on writing stuff for the new album, basically the first album we write together.
Sure.
But when I heard it, I was floored because I never knew who Louis Sanson is.
Okay.
I had no idea. And he's one of the, kick-ass singer. That's, unfreaking believable.
Right.
And Andy Seed on drums. I was floored when I got it. I was like, oh my God, this, how this came together. But I kind of lived in that world a little bit because, remember, I played the first Dokken record ever.
That's right.
Breaking the Chains. And that was in that vein, roll it back 20 years or 30, whatever. And then with Don Dokken, I lived in that world. And it was that 80s kind of rock. And this, it's kind of similar. It's just, it seems to me it's a little more progressive here and there.
Sure.
But in essence, it sounds like a great 80s record that nobody can make anymore, and for some reason, here it is.
Right. Now for you, obviously, like you said, you have that 80s background, but it's been a long time. I know you said 30 years. I hate to tell you, but it's been 10 more than that, my friend. It's been almost a half century since you were in doing that with Dokken. But I know you have that, but so much of your career is Accept, obviously, which is very different from this. For you as a bass player, and I'll tell you what I hear, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound like you're just following the drummer in this. It sounds like you're being very creative the bass lines are being very creative within the songs on Ashrain, which is a different style than Accept. So for you, did you have to adjust how you play, or did it come very naturally?
Well, to give you a little background, before I joined Accept, I was in a very progressive band, and the bands I listened to when I grew up first was Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Okay.
And then came Deep Purple, Rainbow, AC/DC. So I come from that world, and I kind of adjusted for Accept to take that role and do the best I can. So I became the heaviest right hand, in bass for a long time. But my love is actually the way I play now. Where it is where I interject myself a little bit when it's appropriate. Only that, and where it makes a difference. It's also my sound. I'm not that very low, and I don't have that high ting 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 either. I have this middle bony barking bass sound, which sits perfectly between the bass drum and the guitars. It lives there in its own space. So by having that, it allows it to play things that just give the song a little extra something. I don't know what it is, but instead of just pedaling the note,
Right. No, you're absolutely correct, and I'll tell you, I'm gonna be totally honest here. I have never heard of Nozomu Wakai. I've never heard of him before. What an amazing musician this guy is. I mean, the work that he's doing and the writing that he's done here is how is it that we have not heard of him, or a lot of us have not heard of him before?
Well, the Western world doesn't pay really that much attention to a Japanese artist,
True.
So there's loudness, and that was that. And
right.
It's baby metals. That is think about the progression, the time difference. But no, he's been busy, and he's a producer as well. So he produces. He's a graphic designer, so he does album stuff. He does a lot of stuff. Right now, he plays in a band called Psy.
Oh yeah, the black metal band, or it's like
black. Yeah, he plays for them, and they have elaborate costumes and cool. But his love is doing what this is. Playing this Japanese version of 80s metal.
Sure.
And he's just an all-around talent. And then when the both of us got together, it just exploded. And I said to him, really, if I had my say, let's do some traditional Japanese music.
Okay.
And revamp that and put that in it. So we're working on that right now. So the next album is going to be different than this. I mean, at the core, it'll keep that vibe, but introducing some really cool traditional Japanese drums, traditional Japanese singing, some aspects that make it interesting for Japanese people, first of all, but also for Europeans or Americans. Well, that's something different. When the band Who came out from Mongolia, that was quite refreshing to see somebody play with different instruments and use kind of different approach to everything. And for them, it was cool. So I think Nozomu, why not do some Japanese? They have incredible music and instruments. And anyway, that's the future right now.
Sure.
We're here, and I'm just thrilled, and honored to be in this band, because these musicians are just really, really something else.
No, you're absolutely correct. And when people hear this, they're gonna hear just that. I mean, the songs are they're really, really musical without, I'll put it this way. There's a lot of us, and I'm one of them, cannot listen to a band like Dream Theater. It's a little too artsy. It's a little too musical for me. You guys are doing very musical stuff, but it's still very catchy. And that's really hard to accomplish. And it's, shorter songs. It's 3-4 minute songs, 5-minute songs with a lot of playing, but not being over noodly. And I think that is what's going to make Ashrain catch with a lot of people. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a fan of the long noodly songs either, because you can't keep track of it and you get tired of it. So the idea is always to have a catchy riff and come to the point quickly. And then after that, do something different, go somewhere else, and then meet again at the end point. And I think we accomplished that here, and it keeps the listener interested.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps them, oh, I want to hear the next song. If the first song is only 9 minutes long, I mean, you got to take a coffee break. So but
exactly.
That is the nature of that's how the 80s were. It was a it was an MTV generation. So back then, even the songs were kind of written after like a couple of years of MTV with MTV in mind.
Right.
Short and this, and come to the point. And to me, it's like if you say Dream Theater, it's a mix between Dream Theater, Van Halen, Motley Crue, you name it. Stick them all in there. Beat the bag and then squeeze it, and Ashrain comes out.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good comparison there. Now I do want to dig into the record a little bit. I'm going to start with what is my favorite song on the record, and it's my favorite song in large part because it does go a lot of directions musically. That's Symphony of Despair. Just a fantastic song. Has a lot of, I don't want to say direction changes as much as mood changes in the song. It's the most moody song on the record. Talk a little bit about this one and performing on this one, because it's such a cool musical number.
Well, that one was a little bit of a challenge because I really wanted, make sure that I get and support what the original idea was, and it's in the title, Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
So something that's not your little tiny song. It's something different, and I actually had to work on that quite a bit, and that's the way I work. I get the song, I listen to it, then I make a run through, and then I record something, and then I keep going and just keep the parts where I'm happy with, and I keep going over and over and over. And first I analyze the riff. How do I play with the riff? But then I analyze the drums. What does he do there? Okay.
Sure.
Most importantly, I analyze the vocals because I'm a singer as well and backgrounds. So, the vocals are the key. You follow the vocals. The guitar riff is always the same. That's generic in a way. The vocal creates what the song becomes. So I follow the vocal. And that one, I had a lot of following to do. And but in the end, but that took me like almost 3 days.
Okay.
But that's how you get there. It's not just, okay, tape run, let's go next.
Right.
You got to put your heart and soul in it and kind of understand what the composer, the writer, what he was thinking and feeling. And that's not written when you get the track. That's not written anywhere.
Sure.
So that's for you to find out and for you to figure out how he feels, what the mood is, and then, okay, how do I get in there? But that is a good example of one of the songs on the album that's not as simple and not as easy.
Sure. No, you're right. And to contrast that, so that people don't think that this is just an artsy noodly record, because it's really not. But the first two tracks, Requiem for Screamer and Are You Ready for Rock, those are just straight up turn it to 11 and rock and headbang type of songs. A lot more simplistic, a lot more what arena rock used to be, which I have to imagine those were a lot of fun to record and put your parts on, no?
Well, these are, I have to be quite honest with you, these are very easy. Sure. Because they speak to you right away, and you can picture yourself playing that in front of an audience. You don't even have to think twice. You know exactly what to do. That's like a given almost. They that's just the way they are. But I give you one. Put on the Trigger. If that interesting starts with the bass. That's an intro, which is unique, and then there's some tempo changes in there, which are really interesting. So again, there's a song which is a typical 80s song. When you look at the vocals, it could have been Jolene Turner singing that one.
Sure.
But then there's the changes there in there. They wouldn't have done it in the 80s. They would have been just be the same, So that's what makes it different. But yeah, that's one of my favorites. Not just because there's a bass intro. It's just a catchy song. And the video, we made a video, and I was here in Florida. I live in Florida, so he
Okay.
said, you sent me something. We want to do the video, and obviously everybody sent something in, and that seems to be the common threat nowadays when you have videos and people live, all over the world. And to me, almost I kind of like that because, I haven't met the other two yet.
Really?
Yep. Yeah. Well, Lurie lives in, I think, Portugal,
Okay.
and NDC lives in Spain.
Sure.
And Zomo is in Japan, and I'm in Florida. So interesting enough, you have two scenarios. In the old day, you had a band that is in a room and they record all together, and here goes the tape and go. So all these egos, all these emotions are in the room at the same time, which we always, for a long time, thought, well, it's the greatest thing ever. Until you come to take number 5, because somebody made a mistake, then the next guy, and you start looking at each other like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Right. Sure.
And then the air leaves the song, the excitement, the freshness. So when you have it like this, it's a little bit different because you have no idea what the personality is like of the person. What you know is what they play, and that gives you an indication. I can tell when the drummer is dedicated, when he's like, when it wasn't just one take and all right, I'm done, next. I can tell when they're so good. Same with the singer. I mean, it's freaking unbelievable. A lot of work in there, to get it right. So then you can just concentrate on the music, and you meet later,
Right.
and celebrate, and then go from there. So the same with the video. It's the way it is, but it's kind of cool that you get like everybody's in his own world, and you get that footage and put it together. But the song is the glue.
Right.
Where you then, you watch it and you don't even pay attention that it's on different continents. You just watch it because you're listening to the song.
Right. Do you think as you go forward in the future that you'll do more music this way with, throwing waves or MP3s back and forth to keep recording? Or do you think now that you've found that you have a chemistry, you'll book time to get together in some point somewhere in the world and record for the next thing?
I think the way of the future is to gather the ideas, him and me writing the stuff. So, and probably Lurie as well.
Okay.
But writing the stuff. But then once it's written, then it would be a good time to go somewhere, meet, and record it together. That's the idea. But studio time, everything, in nowadays, that's a very expensive business, flights, and there's cost involved. So you want to minimize the cost by being totally prepared and say, okay, we got everything down, everybody rehearsed at home, we meet, and we get this done in a week.
Right.
In a room. Yeah, yes. And the same with you. You're probably going to ask me, is there any live gigs in the future? I say yes, but with one album you don't have enough material. So, you could do festivals where you play 45 minutes. That would be enough. And I don't want to be in a band, where they then live play and then all of a sudden we play balls to the wall because I'm from Accept. I don't like, it's new band. That's the music. That's the end of that. And so, but maybe next year for some festivals, I think it depends how the reaction is. Nobody likes the album. There's no relevance to it.
Right. Well, and part of it too has to be, do you really want to play a festival at noon on a Thursday, because nobody knows the band either? That kind of defeats the I mean, yeah, it's great that if you get noon at Vakken, that's fantastic because it's still 80,000 people or 100,000 people. But at the same time, how many of those people will pay attention and even learn the band's name if you're one of the earliest bands? No,
that is correct. That's what I'm saying. This is all in the open. It really depends, how how the album goes, and it's all the same all the time. Then you see what the offers are. If they're not good enough, you stay home. We have other things to do. We're all very busy people,
Right.
I just finished playing last year, actually. That's a year ago already. I played the bass tracks for Mick Mars' new solo album, but that's been in the works for 1,000 years. So that, I don't know. You never know if the tracks make the see the light of day. But anyway, so that was like like going back to the 80s as well. and I've been doing a lot of that stuff. And I've just been on tour with Udo for 3 months because his bass player collapsed. So I helped out there, and it's been very, very busy for me.
Sure. In today's world, Peter, it's such a different animal than it was in the heyday when you started. Obviously the money is completely different. The costs, even now, just the costs of touring are crazy right now. Do you think that music itself, and you're as somebody that's been an international artist who's been successful all over the world, do you think it's starting to actually devolve a little bit to where it's going to become more territorial than international because of the costs being so much to travel now?
In a sense, yes. I mean, you probably read it too. There's several bands now. Because of ticket sales, they said, "Well, we're not going to South America. We're not going to Europe." So, what happened is that there is a handful of bands at the top left. They do this kind of business, and it makes sense because it's just so elaborate and so big. And then there's basically the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest now just basically goes out and plays smaller venues. So for the audience, to me, that's a plus. At any given day, I like to see anybody in a small venue. Nobody wants to see anybody in a stadium or even a big arena. Because the price, so small venue, you can afford a beer and you can park and you get home in time. Makes all sense to me. The band still makes a living. I'll give you an example. My son's band, Howling Giant, they're from Nashville as a trio.
Okay.
They're on tour right now for 3 weeks, and then they go on tour for another 5 with Ruby the Hatchet and Elder. And they got their van, they got their equipment. They got they got a bed in the van, so the 3 of them drive, so one can always sleep. They get their merch. They get some little money every night for the show, but it's enough for them to come home, and each has a couple of thousand they made that month, and you gain your fans. I think that's almost the old-fashioned way. You have to earn it one by one, and that's the way it goes. But on the other hand, like for instance, their case, they're an incredible band. Their music is so totally different, and they're getting discovered by people who are in a club with 100 other people. But the next time they come back, they got 150, 180, 200. Then they get invited to Psycho Las Vegas to play at the festival. It moves. They're at an age they can do that. So if you're that age, perfect. If you're older than that, you don't want to do that anymore. So that's why there's a lot of 80s bands, they just don't tour anymore. Guys say, I had it. No, thank you very much.
Right. Definitely. Well, as a dad, I'm always curious for you dads that now have sons or daughters that are musicians. What do you take more pride in now? What you're doing now musically, or what your kid's doing? Because it's awful fun to watch your kid succeed.
Well, in my case, it's obviously my son, because he's literally, I hate to say it, but he's as good as me or better. He's better. He's a modern version of me. He has the same playing style. The guy hears something once and plays it. He has the ear of, I don't know, perfect ear. And he's just a born bass player. Well, I was a guitar player before, I was just kind of forced into that. And I just love watching him and his band and see how they progress. And, my thing, like I said, I never wanted to be a rock star. Never fame or fortune. It was always the craft, the music, either, creating it or playing it live. That's the fun in it. Anything else is just, some people love the fame. Some people just love the dough. But both of them, they don't last forever. But if you have a career where what you created will last forever, like songs like Balls to the Wall or Fast as the Shark or Rest as a Wild Metal Heart, when you have things like this, then you create a legacy. And, then I just watch my son,
Right.
I don't have any pride, honestly. It doesn't make a difference to me.
Okay. Fair enough.
I just
All right. Sounds good. Well, Peter, obviously the new record, as we said, it's called Requiem Reloaded. The band is called Ashrain, Ashrain. Please look it up because you will be happy that you did.
Yes.
Where should we tell people to go, Peter, to buy it? And I don't mean stream it, but to actually buy this thing and to keep up with you guys for if and when tour dates do start coming around or the new record and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, Ashrain has a Facebook page, and
Okay.
then you can get to Amazon and all the other regular where you go to buy your albums. If you buy your CDs, there's going to be vinyl coming out, which is the coolest thing ever. Always, I don't think anybody buys CDs anymore. So you either stream it, you get the MP3, or you spend the money and get the vinyl, and then have something lasting, something cool to look at.
Very
But
good.
your regular outlets will have all that. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, one more time, it is Ashrain. Requiem Reloaded is the album. And Peter, thanks so much for joining me here on Chris Aiken Presents.
All right, go pull the trigger.
There we go.
Bye-bye.